I'm from a charity called Hope for Justice, and we work very much in the space of human trafficking and modern slavery, or anti-human trafficking and modern slavery, I should clarify. But thank you so much for making space for a really great charitable cause and for a professional interest I think that we all share, and we all have a role to play as we face this issue together. As you'll have noticed, as a slight departure from the build schedule, Elaine Jones, our Chief Operating Officer, was unable to be here today, so she does send her apologies. But I now have the great privilege to share with you an issue that is very close to my heart and should make us all think deeper, think wider about the impact of technology and cyber in relation to modern slavery and human trafficking. So this is an issue that should make us all sit slightly uncomfortably, but not just a negative. You know, we're not just trying to show you how dark the world is. Actually, there is a real positive impact that we can have here. And we can all do something to drive meaningful change for the issues of human trafficking, modern slavery, and exploitation. As a short advisory, just to let you know that towards the back end of the talk, I will be sharing a little bit of content around child grooming, online grooming, and exploitation. Not graphic content, not images, but a story nonetheless. So if that is something that you do not want to hear, you will be welcome to leave at that point. And of course, I will remind you at the time as well. But we'll start with the big picture. Now, no one in this room is a stranger to statistics, big numbers, and I would like to highlight one number that perhaps hasn't been spoken about much in this event today, and that is that at any given day, on a day like today, there are up to 50 million people held in a situation of modern slavery and human trafficking. And that's a big number with lots of zeros. And just to kind of contextualize or quantify that for you, you know, we're in a stadium, we're in Old Trafford today, and this is a capacity stadium, a stadium with a capacity of 74,000. If we were to take all the global victims of modern slavery, human trafficking, we would be able to fill this stadium 674 times over. Or to put it another way, if we were to count 1 second per victim of human trafficking and modern slavery, it would take us a year and a half to quantify that number. We're talking a really large global scale issue. Slavery is alive and well, and it's not just resigned to the history books. It is very much part of our world today, and it is exponentially growing, and it affects all of our lives in one way or another. Now, the exploitation of human beings can take several forms, and a few are listed here on the slides. And I'm going to highlight a few of these and give some examples, starting with an issue that is actually not explicitly mentioned in this list. Now, we've already heard about cyber threats, cyber attacks, scams, ransomware, phishing, social engineering, and so forth. We've heard about the new tactics of criminals and scammers and the threat that they pose to our operations, to our cybersecurity on this side of the screen. But what if I told you that on the other side was a victim of human trafficking? Somebody forced to commit crimes against their will for fear of violence, threat of harm to themselves or their loved ones. And for some, this is not just a hypothesis. It's not just an idea I'm coming up with on a Thursday afternoon. No, this is a reality, and people are forced to commit scams. They are trafficked into centers where they have no choice but to conduct these cyber crime operations. Victims are often recruited through job adverts promising work in tech, IT, customer service, but when they arrive, they are trapped and they have their documents taken from them. They're confined in guarded compounds, and they are forced to work long hours under the threat of violence. Now, these individuals, yes, many of them are from vulnerable communities, but some are very educated, more educated than me, I would say. Many of these have multiple masters, PhDs. They are qualified professionals looking for great opportunities in cyber. But when they get to these places, they are beaten, starved, psychologically abused, and they're told that they owe debts to their bosses that they must repay. And the way that they repay this is by conducting scams. But make no mistake, these are victims. These are not criminals. And they are worthy of understanding of what awful situation that they have found themselves in. And what makes this especially cruel is that the scale and the invisibility of this situation. Thousands of people are trafficked into scam centers across Southeast Asia and increasingly in other regions. Many are held in conditions that amount to modern slavery with no freedom, no pay, and no viable way out. In March 2025 of this year, a major international rescue operation successfully freed and repatriated 569 Indonesian citizens, that's just the Indonesian citizens, by the way, who had been trafficked into scam compounds and they were held in Myanmar. This isn't just a law enforcement issue, it's not just a cybersecurity threat, this really is a human rights crisis. Now, scam trafficking is just one face of a much broader issue, and that is the global exploitation of vulnerable people through forced labor, whether that be criminal or otherwise. And while scam compounds operate behind the screens, other forms of trafficking are buried even deeper, hidden in supply chains that power our tech. Now, just a quick show of hands. Who of you in the room have one of these, like an iPhone charger, an Android charger, on your person, in your bag? I think we could all say we all have one of these, right? Now, this is, obviously it's a charger. Now, at the end that plugs into your phone, the thin end, that is made of a metal called tantalum. This is a transition metal due to its high melting point, is commonly used in electronics. It's primarily mined in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Now, these pictures here were taken in 2023, so only 2 years ago. We're not talking long, long ago, only in the last 2 years. And we often see children being used in the mining of raw materials, particularly in areas like the DRC and other countries in the Horn of Africa. In regions rich in resources like cobalt, gold, and lithium, communities are drawn into exploitative situations. They are drawn into these informal and illegal mines where they operate, and they are operated and they are owned by criminal enterprise. Many are trafficked into these jobs. They are working in dangerous conditions with no safety equipment, no contracts, and no way out. Many die in bondage, in debt bondage to their owners, to the quarry owners, and their children will often take on those debts from their parents to restart the cycle, to inherit the burden. And of course, with children, the reality is that their small hands are useful to these quarry owners. They can pick through the dirt and they can collect the small mineral deposits. The work is hard, it is dangerous, and just look, I don't know if you can see, we have some images here, but in the background there, you can see a line of people kind of snaking up the mountainside, the quarry side. That is all children, and look how close they are to the edge of that quarry. Incredibly dangerous, and they're carrying heavy loads on their shoulders, and the girl in the center picture down here just wearing flip-flops on her feet, exposed to the sun and the elements. And it seems such a far cry from Manchester, this lovely event that we're experiencing today. But these raw materials are in our world. They enter our supply chains, and we are using them right now. So whether it's online or underground, the systems that enable trafficking are interconnected. And we want to tackle the problem. We need to look beyond the surface to our supply chains, the recruitment practices, and the industries that quietly profit from forced labor. And some of these are our industries and our bottom lines that we are talking about. 10 years ago, a study was taken in the UK with UK businesses, and 77% of them believed that they would find modern slavery in their supply chain, whether that's from raw material through to factory assembly, to cleaners, to delivery drivers, to the disposal of waste at the end of the cycle. It does not just exist in the mine, it does not just exist in the office, but it can exist on our roads and in our recycling centers as well. It does not just exist in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, it can exist in Manchester, in London, in a small town outside Huddersfield, Leicester, Nottingham. And let me tell you, it does happen in these places. We have seen it, I have seen it. Now, many business leaders, and many of you in the room, you might look at this and be sitting here with a certain pressure, a certain stress. What can I do? Where do I even start with an issue so big and so embedded in our operations? It is so challenging to know where to start and where to mitigate the risk this occurs in your supply chain. Businesses are often asked to keep production costs down, and we can't exactly avoid using rare earth minerals and elements. This is part of our electronic development. It's part of our supply chain. Very, very difficult to get your head around. But if you work for a business that, with a turnover of over £36 million, you will be required by UK law to produce an annual modern slavery statement, which has to be signed by your chief executive officer, and in some cases, your board as well. Similar legislation exists in Australia, in California, Germany, and is incoming across the EU as well. Governments are waking up to this, and they are going to want to ensure that businesses are transparent and are either already mitigating the risk or on a path to compliance to make sure that modern slavery is not occurring to a great extent in their supply chains. Frankly, doing nothing is no longer an option. But the good news is that there is support available to you. As an organization, we do support businesses to get their head around this risk, to assess the supply chain, to assess the high-risk areas, and put you on a path towards compliance. And I'll talk a little bit more about how you can find out more about that later as well. But this is not an overnight shift. It's not a thing that we can just flick the switch and you'll become compliant in 24 hours. No, this really is a long-term, meaningful drive towards change. To protect the rights of those most vulnerable and to end modern slavery and human trafficking in our supply chains. Now, just as exploitation can be hidden in the physical supply chain behind our products, it also thrives in the digital spaces we use every day. The internet has become a powerful tool for traffickers, not just for recruiting individuals and adults into forced labor, but increasingly for targeting children. And that's not just children far away in the DRC. No, it's our children, the children that live right here in the United Kingdom. Now, I will just repeat my advisory. I will now be sharing a little bit of content about online grooming and child exploitation, so do feel free to step out or tune out if that is a concern for you. Online platforms are now one of the primary environments where grooming and exploitation begin. Traffickers and predators use social media, gaming apps, and messaging services to build trust with children. And what starts as a simple conversation can quickly turn into manipulation, coercion, and abuse. And it can happen entirely online, with children being exploited from their own bedrooms. The trauma is just as real, and the consequences are just as devastating. But to understand how these statistics, how these long, far away, distant stories actually become a reality, we need to talk about a young boy called Max. Now, this story represents a case that some of our team worked on in the United States. This is a true story. The names have been changed on the locations, but this is a true story that as an organization we have supported. Max was a 16-year-old American boy living in Tennessee. He liked playing video games, as most 16-year-olds do. He was homeschooled. He did not have a huge community around him physically, but he was very active online. He was a confident, outgoing young man, and he was able to make friends through these gaming platforms. And one of those friends was a 14-year-old boy who lived in Arkansas, 6.5 hours away from Max, and he was called Tim. They chatted a lot and they played video games a lot. In fact, they played so much that Max started to be put under a curfew by his parents. He was playing these video games way too much, and he had to cut off at a certain time. His friend Tim decided, well, why don't we move this conversation to Snapchat so we can continue to talk even when we're not gaming? And that's exactly what they did. One day, Tim messaged Max to say he was going to be traveling to Tennessee with his father to visit his grandmother who was unwell. And maybe they could meet up if he was nearby. Max had never said exactly where he lived to this friend. And then when Max asked Tim, "Where are you going?" Tim responded, and Max could not have been more excited that Tim was coming to the hometown of Max. And even more exciting for a 16-year-old boy, Tim was going to be staying at a motel minutes walk away from Max's house. He nearly burst with excitement. This friendship was meant to be, right? My friend that I've met online, what a wonderful world. How are we all connected? My friend is coming to visit me. And this was going to be a really exciting moment for Max. The day arrived, Max got a message from his friend Tim and made his way to the motel. And it was only just a short walk from his house. Back in Max's house, Max's dad went up to his room to check on Max. He was not there. He had left the house. He was not in the house. This was strange. You know, this boy does not have many friends locally. Where has he gone? So his dad started to panic a little bit, checked his phone, checked his iPad, and found a thread of conversation on WhatsApp describing the arrangements that they had made. Max was going to this motel. Why was Max going to a motel? Who's Tim? The dad had no idea. Luckily, 2 weeks earlier, Max's mum and dad had received a training session from some of our trainers and investigators based out of Tennessee, and they are ex-law enforcement, and they are very knowledgeable of this issue. But they had received some training, just normal training that occurred within a church, a bit of awareness of the issue. These are the types of risks that you could face, that your children could face. This was 2 weeks earlier. In that moment, Max's dad thought, well, I've had some training. I wonder if this is actually what I've just been trained about. So he called our team. Our team went to the house, reviewed these messages. Sure enough, we were very, very concerned about what was going on here. When Max arrived at the motel, he knocked on the door, and an older man answered and said that he was Tim's dad. He seemed nice, invited Max in, offered him a drink, and said that, Tim's just gone out to get some pizza. He'll be back momentarily. Would you like a drink while you wait? I have Dr. Pepper, I have beer, I have whiskey. Max, he wasn't a drinker, he opted for the Dr. Pepper. The dad poured it into a cup, handed it to him. Max sat on the edge of the bed. Now, about 4 minutes, literally 4 minutes after Max had arrived at the motel, there was another knock at the door of the motel. And it was our team. Our team had arrived and intercepted what was a very, very dangerous situation. They saw Max sitting on the edge of the bed. They said that they were there to collect Max and that they had called the police and they would be arriving very, very soon. Tim's dad tried to leave and he was quickly detained by law enforcement and taken down to the precinct. When the police arrived, they searched the room and they had found that there was a camcorder set up in the wardrobe. There was a bag of tools, and I'll only use that word, that were to be used. And when they tested the drink, they tested the Dr. Pepper, it was laced with Rohypnol. There was a very, very sinister plan going on in this situation. And he got arrested, he got taken down to the precinct, like I say. Max, still very confused. He didn't know what was going on. Why have they carted away my friend's dad? My friend's going to be back soon. And it took him a while to come round to the truth that there was no Tim, that this man was the person speaking to him all along. Now, you may think that, how did this perpetrator know where Max lived? He'd simply left his location preferences open on gaming. He'd been doxxed through a gaming platform. There was nothing more complex than that. They found out where he lived, and the fact that they were coming to this motel, that this man was coming to this motel, was no coincidence. It was all an orchestrated situation. Max had left his locating preferences on, and this exploitation happened so quickly, quietly. And this is why we need to help children be aware of these risks, and for parents and carers to know what to do. Max was fortunate. This grooming ordeal did not transpire the way that this man had planned, and he is now, I have to say, serving 12 years in prison for his actions. Now, one last thing. Perpetrators of online exploitation are masters of disguise. It is easy to think that they are criminal individuals operating in dark corners, but no, this man was not a criminal mastermind of a gang. No, he was not a downbeat thug. No, he was not a faceless evil, distant from our world. No, this man was the vice president of a bank. Now, Max's story is one of many, and he represents so many stories happening around us of human trafficking, of modern slavery, of exploitation. Either it is through the scams that we fight, through our cybersecurity defenses that we've been talking about today, the supply chains that power our businesses, or among our children as they connect online. And you can stare down the darkness of these situations, you can feel overwhelmed by the scale of the tragedy and the injustice, and you may feel fearful, numb, or powerless. But I believe there is a hope, and I believe that justice in these situations is a non-negotiable. And if you agree with that, if you agree in a hope for freedom, a hope for equity, and a hope for justice, then I invite you to join with us on this mission to protect as many children and adults as we can and really bring an end to modern slavery. These are a couple of QR codes. On the left-hand side, if you do wish to find out more about how to address modern slavery in your supply chain, we do have an entire team dedicated to supporting you in that. Please do feel free to reach out. On the right-hand side, if you are interested in some of the training materials that I talked about, that the Max's parents had been through, we train parents, we train carers, but we also train professionals in workplaces to understand, to spot the signs of modern slavery and human trafficking. Please do reach out. And of course, if you are passionate about this issue and you would like other ways to partner, you can give, you can donate, and we will be incredibly grateful for any support that you can give. And with that, I will hand back to Sarah, and I thank you for helping us bring freedom. All the best.